Hello everyone, in this video of React documentation we're gonna learn about React context. So when to use React context and what is the scenario why React context was introduced. Let's discuss on it first. So let's assume that a scenario which is explained here. We have a toolbar on the root component which we provide the props as a theme data as a values. Theme equal to dark, and from the toolbar itself we need to pass this dark value to its button as well. So we see that it is a 3 level of props passing from one to another, right? We have toolbar, then we pass those toolbar theme value to our theme button, and theme button receive these props, and after it receive the props then it just add those values as a theme in the button component. And if you look into it, like this is very difficult to manage the props, right? So if we have, like in a larger application, we have hundreds and thousands of components, and all those components, if we need to pass props like this, it will be very difficult to manage those props. So React introduced this context to solve this problem. There is other approach also, like you can use the state as well, which we will look into in the future. So when we pass this theme to theme button, and from theme button to button, we can just have a global state which we call as a context, and we can store all this value which you need to, and whenever we need this data we're gonna just use it. So the example here can be split into something like this. So we have this theme context. So the syntax is we use the react.create context, and this theme context will have this provider, consumer, both. So when we use the react context.provider, we pass the default value. Currently is set as light. We can pass any value as well. This will can be empty value or something like that. And then when we want to consume in the button object or button component, we just say that give me the context from the theme context, and I will use this value as well. So a good example, I have just created a small ReactJS project using CLI, and on the index we have this app.js. From app.js, what we did is, like, we create another component called react app context. What we did is, like, we declare this using the react.create context as a empty object, and then from context we see that we can get the provider. If we want to, we could have done also consumer as well. So this way we can consume also, but there is other way also to consume an object, but let's keep it as it is. Then we import that in our app component as a provider, and we provide this app provider value as a green. Okay, and under this, whatever component we write, like if we have 10 home component, all the component will receive this value as a green. So we don't need to pass manually as a props here color equal to green all the places. Okay, so how to accept this value then? So if you go to home component, we don't have to declare like, okay, hey, this value is green or something. We just go to button component and we say that use context and pass this context value, and this way, like, instead of this we could have used the consumer as well, which also works, but for functional component this is better approach, I think. It's more readable. So we get the color and we just display it. So we created all the button and all are green. Now let's say if we want to change it, we'll just go it and change the value here itself, red or something, and all the value will gonna be red itself. So that's how we use the context. So before you use context, like these are few things that always need to remember. So avoid passing some props through many labels. Okay. Then there is something called React composition is often simpler solution than context, which is like we learn about a composition, like we can pass a whole object itself, like for example in a page, or user object or avatar icon, all these things can be very easily handled. So when you use context, like we need to send the data to multiple layer or something, that's more useful. Okay. So another way, like they have shown, like without the use of context, so they pass everything as a props value, and then the props is rendered after that. So it's quite tedious to do all this thing, I believe. So context provide a simpler solution in my knowledge, so always use that context. So you can also use this composition API as well. You see that we have this top bar as a React function, and this function top bar itself is actually passed through composition. So what we could do is, like this button itself from the app component, we could have created this button itself, like something like this, constant button equal to, we could do that, and this whole button can be passed as a object itself, right? So what will happen is, like we can accept the button as a props, and this whole thing red and green can be defined here itself. Like we could have done like style, we can do all the coloring here itself. So this will also work. So but I feel that use of context helps sometimes, like you want to login, after login the user, you want to clear some local storage or something, or set some local storage, that also can be done. So this is something done using the composition, which we have seen in the main concept. So this is the composition. So I have a video on composition as well. Do look into the playlist and you'll find something composition related. And how the React context work is, like we have seen, like react.create context, and we pass the default value, and in the provider we can do that. So what it does, it mean is, like here we pass the context provider, right? Instead of this, we could have like app context. Okay, let's see. Okay, app context we input as a default. Okay, export. So what we could do is, like we could say app context, we could say app context dot provider, and this will also work for us. Yeah. So but I think the better approach is like using the context, so you don't need to define every time. And we can also look into the React context as well. Like if we look into React context as a provider, we see that this has different lifecycle as well. So we notice that on component in mount, and side effect of using is the value of my context. So similar, like we see the component in update and component will mount as well. Other than that, to use the consumer, so we can use the consumer as well. So how we use that is basically what we do is we can just return from here. Let's say we want to use the consumer value in this page. So what we can do is my app app context consumer, and what we can do is, like we can take the references here, something like this, and then we can print this, right? So this button we can put inside, and it return a function here. So what we can do is this button can come here, and also here if we have another div, let's say, and when we can do json dot file. Okay, this way also we can use the consumer to consume this data. So let's see the example how it run. So we notice that these values are getting printed here. So after the consumer, let's see the display name. So display name is nothing but a string property which for the dev tool to be used. Not really, we don't use that. Dynamically changing the context. So this is something we're gonna use, like let's say we use the React context when do the login, and initially we set the theme as dark. Okay, and then on click on some event or something happen, we want to change this value itself. Okay, to do that we can set a button or events where once we click something we can create a setter of this create context, and then this value can get changed automatically based on the click event. So the example is shown here. So we can have a state in this context itself, and on change of the state what we can do is just change the state value which is gonna run the render itself, and which is gonna do the change itself. Let's see an example if we can do that. So what we can do is like on click on this button we're gonna toggle the current value. So as of now we set the value as red from statically, right? So what we can do is like we can say constant, let's say color set to use state, and by default we set as a red. Okay, and we change the static value to color, and what we want to do is like on change of this value color, it should return always. So what we have to do is this set color we have to set from the context itself. So what we can do is like on set color we can pass this in the props here itself. So let's see how it does. Is like what it does is on the provider itself they send, and then change theme they send a function, but we don't have a function in our root object, but this set color need to be sent across the provider itself, right? So we can send the values as well as the function itself. So this function is available for us in rest of the classes, right? Rest of the class or objects. So what we can do is we can do something set color as a function, or maybe color as color, and also we can do function equal to set color. Okay, now if we go here we'll see that if we click we want to set an event, right? So on the button itself what we can do is like so we can set fn also from the context itself, and we can run this fn function. So here itself instead of set color what we do is we toggle the color. So we say that constant toggle color equal to, so what we do is set color equal to if color equal to red, then we set as green, or else we set as red. Okay, now instead of the set color we set the toggle color. Okay, now this should do the work for us. Let's say refresh. So you see, every time I click, the value get changing from the state itself. So this is how we do the context value change also. And what's next? Multiple contexts also can be used. So I believe this is similar how we currently doing. We can create multiple contexts and import those contexts as well. That should be so the caveat is there are some specific requirements, like when we do the changes of the values, what it does, it will change your whole DOM itself. So sometimes it might be like not that useful for the rendering, but most of the time we don't face this since it's just a virtual DOM and they can manipulate easily. So that's it on the React context. See you guys on the next video. Bye.